The Flash movie just came out today. We saw the Flash movie today, and here's our review for the Flash movie, and I promise it will be at normal speed. We're only doing this fast in the cold open.
I'm here.
Welcome to the Cinefanatics. My name's Robert Adams.
I'm Chris Adams.
And we've got a spoiler-free review for The Flash. I had no idea how to transition out of that, but we're going to do it anyways, and hopefully do it pretty quick. By the way, before we get started with this, if you have any thoughts, feelings, and opinions about this movie, let us know down below in the comments. I want to know your opinion as well, so let us know about that. So, yeah. Anyways, diving into this movie's been in the making for...
since before I was born.
I mean, it feels like it,
yeah,
for the most part. This movie's been in the making for quite a long time.
At least 5 years or so.
Yeah.
This current iteration of the movie.
I remember, so we have a show weekly, a live show, the tagline, where we're talking about movie news. And I remember right after we first started the tagline, which was March of 2020, which was a great time to start talking about movie news, that we did an episode when they announced that Michael Keaton was going to be returning to play Batman in this movie. And I know the first thing we were all thinking was like, wait, we're going to get to see Michael Keaton playing the older Batman from like Batman Beyond. And we're like, oh, that would be cool. No, that's not what we got with this.
Not quite.
But it was still kind of like a nice step. Kind of gave like a good idea of the possibility of where that could go.
Yeah, so... first of all, I'm pretty sure we mentioned it, but it helps to reiterate, as we get into this review, not going to have any spoilers or anything. There is a lot to spoil,
so much we could spoil.
There's so much to spoil. Also, there's so much on Twitter that's spoiling this movie right now, so be careful on Twitter if you haven't seen this movie.
Yeah, so be good in the comments. If y'all are not good in the comments, we're going to spoil this movie. Just warning.
Retroactively, we're going to go back to
I don't know how that's possible as far as editing and filming goes.
We can't tap into the Speed Force.
Yeah, time travel's not really a thing, but it is a thing in this movie, and I will tell you right off the bat, that was a thing for me that I felt was a little awkward. We've had the conversation already about this. The time travel, this is another movie that deals with time travel. They do explain their version of time traveling, which is good and bad. There's a lot of stuff... I don't really want to go into details about this. I do want this to be kind of a fast review, not because we're talking about The Flash, but I just want to sum it up. This movie has a lot of moments in regards to how the time traveling goes that me personally, I'm like, that's not how I would do it. And that's one of those things, when you see that in movies, if you ever watch a movie and you're like, that's not how I think I would react or how I think a person would normally react, I feel like there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie. And that I feel like that kind of takes you out just a little because it's not using at least your thoughts and definition of like the common sense of that scenario.
Yeah, based on the conversation we had before, though, I do say that for me personally, I feel that the script, the story, as much as people might find plot holes and stuff later on down the line.
I'm pretty sure they're in there.
I'm sure people will. There's always going to be plot holes with anything dealing with a multiverse or a time travel or anything like as the such. I found it to be, at least on my initial first viewing here, pretty airtight. It felt like they did well to kind of cover their grounds in certain story beats and certain elements where... you know, you'd feel like something needs to happen, and they come in and they excuse it real quick, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. That just makes sense. They did that a lot throughout this movie. I'm really hard pressed to be able to give like a specific example, but I feel like once people see it, they'll kind of know and understand. For the most part, though, I feel like as a time travel movie, as a multiverse kind of movie, they did a really good job of. For me, maybe not for you, but for me, they did a really good job of explaining kind of how it all works in a really simplistic way that was just easy to understand. In my opinion, I feel like they explained it in a much easier to understand way than, say, Avengers Endgame did.
That was the one I was going to bring up because there is a part of this movie that they are explaining how time travel works. in this world, in this universe, and it was very, like, as soon as they start talking about it, my first thought is, like, this is exactly like the scene in Endgame where Bruce is trying to explain, and they're like, Back to the Future is bullshit?
Except it's so much simpler, it's so much more easily explained here.
Yeah.
For me, the scene kind of plays out like hey, we know you've seen Avengers. Don't worry about it. This is how we're doing it.
It did do that. It did do it. Shut the hell up, everyone. This is how it goes from here on. This is a different movie. Yeah, that one was it was interesting, but like again, even though it's different from how Avengers did it, it's different from how Back to the Future did it. It still kind of makes like a little bit of sense. That's weird.
It does make logical sense how they explain it.
How can there be so many different ways to explain time travel to us normal, like scientists,
non-sciencey brained people?
Yeah,
the peons and regulars of the world.
Us people that just watch Big Bang Theory and not actually are a part of Big Bang Theory.
Hello, I'm a common.
Yeah.
They did a really good job, though, with that. And I think that's kind of like the big barrier to entry, I think, going into this movie is, does the story actually make sense? And yes, it does. Now, on top of that, you're also involving essentially alternate universe characters we've already seen. Give or take Supergirl, I guess. We haven't really seen a Supergirl in this DC universe as it stands so far. And all of that stuff actually does make sense too with what they explain. Not going to give that part away because I think you got to see that in the movie play out specifically, but it does make sense for them to bring those characters in. And I had a lot of fun with all of the characters in this movie. Everybody doing their own part and kind of playing a specific piece to the giant puzzle. I actually really actually enjoyed it.
So real quick, let's talk about the acting in this. Sasha Calle as Supergirl, she does very well. I would like to see more of what they could explore with her. I doubt we're going to get that because of the whole changeover from the DCEU to the DCU. I don't know how possible that's going to be.
They could. Yeah. They could get her to play Supergirl in the new DCU.
I'm going to come back to this here in a little bit, but also Michael Keaton back as Batman. He's a lot more cartoony-ish. He's not as like the dark, brooding Tim Burton.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense. This is also like decades of separation since the last time we saw his specific Bruce Wayne Batman in Batman Returns. So that would make sense if he's maybe not all there character-wise, and that definitely seems the angle that they played him. So I mean, I feel like that was fine.
There's a couple moments with him. We saw him in trailers. They do feel kind of forced in the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
Some like fun little callbacks. They're still fun. I still enjoyed them. They are very forced, but it's one of those things that you're like, okay, all right, and you're moving on.
So they also brought back Michael Shannon as General Zod because most of this movie takes place at the end of Man of Steel when Zod's trying to like destroy Metropolis with the World Machine or whatever.
I'll be honest, he is really more of a plot point than an actual character of any kind of note.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet he probably only filmed like maybe 3 new scenes, and everything else could easily have been archive footage.
I think he's been on record saying that he only came in and shot for like a week or 2.
Yeah. He's really not a big major character. The real plot of this movie is really just Barry against himself kind of situation. But I'm trying to think who else is it. Barry's parents both portrayed very well. They did change out his father is now played by Ron Livingston from Office Space versus what's his face? That
Billy
Crudup, yeah, who played him in the Justice League movie.
Which, let's be honest, they look so similar. You can't really notice it. Well, I mean,
Billy Crudup was only in that one shot.
Yeah. It's a fair change, and Ron Livingston does a very good job with the emotional parts that his character needed to play.
Not a spoiler, really, but there was a shot where they showed the scene from Justice League, but they replaced Billy Crudup with Ron Livingston. I thought that was kind of a nice like little touch.
Yeah.
Him in the prison on the phone talking to Barry through the window. So that was kind of cool. I don't know if there really was anyone else really of note to highlight in here. I will say Ezra Miller. So I will say I'm not a huge fan of Ezra Miller as the Flash. I think they do a very good job if your Flash is meant to be more of a dark, brooding type of character.
And
not
goofball.
Yeah, it's not the Flash that I'm used to. Like, I would say easily the one that I would compare to is the Flash from the animated series, from the Justice League through the 90s and early 2000s. That is the model of Flash that I have ever since I first heard of the character back when I was a kid. That the animated series is a perfect representation of that.
You're talking about like the one that Michael Rosenbaum did the voice of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is what I'm looking for a Flash. This is a little kid, basically, and like doesn't have that same aesthetic look to the Flash, and that's what kind of weirded me out on the casting.
There is something about the way they play up this version of the Flash, which is that I think in a more realistic sense, the character of the Flash, he's very lean. Mm-hmm. He's very like thinner, which does make sense with the high metabolism thing. However, I believe that Ezra Miller does not embody what I think a lot of us really thought the Flash was as a character. We got that back during like the Justice League when they were introduced as the Flash character. Yeah. But for here, I agree that I don't necessarily know that I would ever cast Ezra Miller specifically as the Flash. Someone else I would go for instead, probably, that fits more in line with the Flash from like the Justice League cartoon as well.
Yeah. Now what I will say though, Ezra Miller does a fantastic performance in this.
Yes.
There's definitely, the last time we effectively have seen their version of the Flash was the Justice League, or the Zack Snyder's Justice League that came out.
Popped up in Suicide Squad.
Yeah, but like very briefly, and we don't get to know that character since then. This is the first time we've really seen this character since the Justice League movie.
Couple cameos here and there.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen that this character has been developed.
Yeah.
This character has matured.
Off screen.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is a completely different Flash, and I do like the way that Ezra Miller plays this Flash in this movie.
Yeah, while not necessarily the cast, like we were saying, not necessarily the cast that we would go for, the characterization, everything was there. They did a really good job portraying what was needed for the role of the Flash here, especially because, as we can tell from the trailer, when you watch in the movie, they're playing a dual Flash. They're playing multiple Flashes here.
Which is funny because the other Flash is essentially the Flash that we already knew from Justice League. The silly, the goofy, the questioning the world, immature, yeah. And so we still get that version of the Flash, but we also get this more mature Flash in this. And yeah, again, I think Ezra Miller did a really good job with it.
Yeah, Barry Allen in this movie truly is the heart of the movie. So getting his story kind of wrapped around, and him actually, despite everything else going on, still being kind of the central focus and what drives you through the movie, is the right choice. And I think they did a very good job with that as well.
Yeah. And then coming back, I would say I want to come back to this, talking about how this is going to lead from the DCEU to the new DCU. I definitely see some groundwork being laid in here. There's definitely a path that if you are in tune with how movies and stories go and stuff, you can see the direction of what they're going to do,
or
what they could do by the end of this movie. There's still like another step or two, and I'm actually now thinking, especially there is post credits in this movie, the post credit of this movie, how that leads into potentially the Aquaman movie that still takes place in DCEU. I could see how they will finish up that full idea with potentially the Aquaman movie to leap into the DCU
potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for certain, but I can see a possible connection thread there that would make sense.
Well, golly gee, I hope that's not too much for some of you out there watching this video, but we're not really giving too much away here.
No.
So the only other thing I would actually say that needs to be kind of like touched on with this movie is the CGI. Now, recently I did hop on Twitter and I saw Andy Muschietti said that some of the CGI in the movie looks off on purpose because we're seeing it from Barry's perspective. Mm-hmm. Certain things, again, there's certain things like in regards to like the Speed Force and the whole time traveling aspect, where the CGI does look a little off. It looks a little off a lot of times when he's actually speeding through and everyone else is moving at regular speed. There are moments there that are just very cartoony in nature, but Andy Muschietti said that was like on purpose. So I feel like there's only so far you can hold that against the movie. I would still say, despite that, there's a lot of moments here that still look very unfinished. I'm the type of person that can usually hang with unfinished CGI or CGI that doesn't look up to realistic standards.
That's the whole point of using CGI.
I go back and I watch Star Wars. A lot of the stuff in Star Wars, while practical, did and does at this point kind of look like miniatures. It does look like, toys and stuff. I hang with that still, especially because you have to suspend disbelief when you're going from the newer CGI of the prequels to the old trilogy to the new trilogy, like all that kind of stuff. So whenever a movie does these kinds of things, I can hang with it still. I know a lot of people out there might not be able to. It might take them out of the movie. But just a note, there are some moments where the graphics are a little off looking.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's an enjoyable movie. I had a decent time with it. Yes,
it's fun. It's entertaining.
For me, there were frustrations in the plot and the story and the decisions that some of the characters decide to have. It's, again, not necessarily what I would do, but I'm not in a movie. I'm watching a movie. So that part aside, I think everything else with this movie, the way it looks, short of the CGI, the acting was very well done. The story, I feel, is pretty good given what they were trying to do with telling essentially the Flashpoint storyline from the comics, while also using this as a connective tissue to where the DC movies are going to go in the future. I think they did a very good job, and they nailed it for the most part. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk out there about this being like the best comic book movie of all time, or at least a lot of people talking up that it's just a fantastic, excellent comic book movie. It is really good. It is a good Flash story. They told a really good Flash story cinematically. That is something that we were all wondering, could they come across in today's day and age and tell a really good cinematic Flash story? They did. There's a lot of fun. It's a lot of excitement. It's not the best comic book movie by far. I don't even think it cracks top 10, honestly, for me.
Yeah.
But it is a really good, fun, entertaining movie. I'm putting it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and rate it as a 6. I had fun. It was entertaining. I don't know how quickly I'm going to come back and rewatch it, but eventually I probably will.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's going to be our review for this. Again, what did you think? Let us know down below in the comments to know your thoughts, feelings, opinions, not only of this review, but of the movie as well. And also, while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. I think that's another button that's down there. Just so many buttons down there. Just hit everything. What? No. Okay, smash it. Whatever. YouTubers. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at The Cinefanatics on YouTube, on Twitter, and Instagram. You can follow me personally at Robert Adams MLP on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, also youtube.com/@RobertAdamsMLP.
And you can follow me at Chris Adams MLP on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, as well as twitch.tv/ChrisAdamsMLP.
Anyways, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you for watching. We will see you on the next one. Goodbye.
That's how he runs.
The Flash movie just came out today. We saw the Flash movie today, and here's our review for the Flash movie, and I promise it will be at normal speed. We're only doing this fast in the cold open.
I'm here. Our neighbors hate us.
Yeah, I was about to make that joke, too. Our neighbors, what the fuck is going on up there?
Your post-credit.